Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's absolutely a privilege to be in a different role today. Usually, we are at the receiving end, and today I'm the exception. May I welcome all our colleagues from parliaments of various great democracies. And the idea today is to have a conversation. And so essentially, feel free to jump in at any point in time, but just try and keep it crisp and short so that we can cover as much ground as possible. So let me start with the first question. Every industrial revolution has generated concerns, apprehensions, ecstasy. It has been transformative in almost every aspect of its transgression into human life, be it the first industrial revolution, which gave you the steam engine and which gave you mechanized textiles, the second industrial revolution, which brought about mining and the telephone and various other innovations. And of course, the third one in the late 90s, which essentially was about the internet and was about digital technologies. So my first question to each of you is that how unsettling do you think that the fourth industrial revolution really is in the context of artificial intelligence? And since all of you are colleagues, anyone can start.
Right, thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and I think it's a hugely important topic. And there's a lot of hot air around AI, and I think two aspects might be separated here. First, we almost always talk about large language models, which is obviously something that we as users of ChatGPT or Claude or Llama or others are facing daily. That's one issue, and that is a consumer interface which concerns content moderation, disinformation, misinformation, all these things. And these might have a very, very transformative and negatively transformative effects on societies and democracies. But then we very often forget the other aspects of AI, which is scientific use of AI. And this is something that might be even more transformative than the large language models. So we heard about, just in the previous speech, we heard about advances in medicine, advances in all sorts of science, and this is something that is certainly on the positive side of AI. So I would say that we talk too much about this communication AI and too little about scientific AI, which could indeed help us solve the huge problems of humanity, including the climate crisis.
So I would agree that at the moment, there's a lot of hype about artificial intelligence. But I would say for any new technology, it's always overhyped in the short term and underestimated in the medium to long term. And you make the point about the industrial revolution and so on. So I'd say to the students who are out here in the audience, so all of the students, you're probably going to be working until sometime in the 2070s. So you think sort of 40 to 50 years from now. So let's go back So think about the way that technology was in the world back in the 1970s and 1980s. All of you who are currently on your mobile phone, because it's more interesting than listening to us, if you were back in the 70s and 80s, it wouldn't exist. In fact, methods of communication back then were far less available. The idea, now that we can phone anywhere in the world or contact anywhere in the world, we just accept it as normal. And the pace of that change is going to be very rapid. And naturally, as humans, we tend to be a little bit conservative. We like what we know. We can be a little bit frightened of change. So I think part of our responsibility as policymakers is we see this change is happening. We know it's going to happen. But it's about how we prepare our citizens, and particularly in terms of the students here, and get people involved in that decision-making process over the next number of years. And I think it's just going to be the pace that's going to surprise people. And I entirely agree. It's going to be in everything from agriculture to transport to healthcare. And we need to debate where it is appropriate and when it is appropriate to use artificial intelligence. And I think I made the point last night. We've got to always see technology as a tool, not as a goal in itself. Our job as legislators is how can we make the lives better for our citizens? How can we provide policies that will improve outcomes for all of our citizens? And if that means using technology, then we put the frameworks in place to do that.
Good afternoon. I'm one who is convinced that AI is an industrial revolution, not just an evolution, not just a new tool. And maybe because of my defense and security background, I see especially side effects. So first of all, when I think on policy making, I think on ethics. For instance, a businessman will make money till Elon Musk. A researcher will research till being able, like Dr. Frankenstein, to create a monster. And as politicians, our role absolutely is to create the good framework, and this is made by ethics. And we worked especially hard on this topic within the Inter-Parliamentarian Union. This is a kind of UN for parliamentarians. And because we don't especially, but the US have the key of the black box, then making and taking good decisions here between democracies is crucial.
So therefore, let me just try and break it down and unpack it. Taking off from what Malcolm said about young people who have a working life of, let's say, the next 5 decades or so. About 8 years back, along with some other colleagues from parliaments around the world, we were trying to do a project looking at the future of work in the context of digitization, automation, robotics, its impact on manufacturing, the job replacements that would, or job disruptions which would happen as a consequence. So as policymakers, my question to the three of you is, how much of disruption in the global employment market do you really see as a consequence of AI? And the reason why I say this is because I had a friend come and see me, and he works for one of the global IT majors, and they have a huge stake in AI, which is being developed. And he said to me that you policymakers do not even grasp the fundamentals of the transformation that is taking place. So therefore, my question to you, the three of you, is if we were to extrapolate 1 decade down the line, what would be the future of work in the context of AI?
So it's quite a big question, but just to say there is going to be huge job displacement, and it's already starting to happen. And we're seeing it particularly in white-collar employment, but certainly if you talk to people in law, in accounting, in the creative industries, we're seeing displacement. But the evidence is also that we're seeing a lot of jobs being created. And right through history, that tends to be what happens. So if you look at when the car came along, or motor vehicles came along, yeah, if you were a coach rider, you know, if you had a horse and coaches, you were going to go out of work. But there's a lot more jobs provided as a result of the invention of the car. And that's similarly what's going to happen with AI. And I think what we need to start to think about is that if you're working as a doctor, it's not that robots are going to replace doctors, but doctors who use AI are going to replace doctors who don't. Lawyers who use AI will replace lawyers who don't. Architects who use AI will replace architects who don't. So it's about getting those basic skills on board very early on. I can mention just from an Irish perspective, just very quickly, 2 things we're doing in Ireland. We're setting up, as part of a skills observatory, a specific AI observatory. So looking in real time in all areas of the employment market where, you know, jobs are being displaced, and learning from that as to what we need to do. And then on the second side, rolling out micro-credential courses in partnership with our universities and training providers for everybody in society. So ranging from simple courses, what is artificial intelligence, to support for SMEs about how they can safely embed AI in their business practices to deliver better services to their customers. And I think our job is about, it's happening. Their jobs are being displaced. We've just got to ensure society is ready for that.
Just for fun and for argument's sake, Malcolm here presented the optimistic case. I wholly subscribe to the possibility of a more pessimistic view. And I attended the very, very successful India AI Impact Summit 2 weeks ago, and I was woken up by the statement by Mr. Nilekani, who's the founder of Infosys, who said that he thinks it's quite possible that there will be a revolt of white-collar workers, because until now we've seen the revolt and consequences of blue-collar workers, or the yellow vests in France, that are protesting this transformation. And when you think about the white-collar workers who've kind of reached the middle class, being software engineers and so forth, to drop down from that achievement may be very painful. But there is a kind of a silver lining. Being an ex-employment minister, I think we have a good opportunity to retrain, upskill and reskill white-collar workers who are symbol analysts, who are readers, who are educated for other works. But there is a possibility that there's a dramatic wealthy already, and that's why very often Keynes' tax are also very often in the discussions when we talk about the societal effects of AI.
I totally agree with you, and I will share with you my own example. I asked him to sum up in English one of my huge reports. I was okay, and within my team of assistants, I made the choice not having all at the same time be at the top level, and just find a way where you can't be replaced.
So if we can shift gears a bit and talk about a regulatory architecture. All of you would recall that when the internet started growing critical in the mid to late 90s, and by the time we came to the 2000s, there was concern around the world that there is a need to put some agreed rules of engagement onto the cyberspace. But at every forum, it was very, very vehemently opposed by the first freedom absolutists, the Silicon Valley and its various clones around the world. And ultimately, agreed rules of engagement around the internet could never emerge. And therefore, you've now seen the balkanization of the net actually being almost divided into spheres of influence and hegemony. Then there is the dark net and the deep net, the more pernicious parts of the internet. And now you see a similar kind of debate around artificial intelligence. Many of the countries whose companies are at the leading edge of this innovation are resisting any regulation, even opting out of joint statements like what happened in Paris. So, in your experience and learning from the internet experience, how do we really try and bridge this regulatory gap? And we'll start with you, because I know you're very passionate about that, Madam Letitia.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I worked hard on this topic of AI and cognitive warfare, and I went last summer to the US to meet the MAGA administration. And when I talked to them, I said, okay, it's very much like on traffic. We need traffic laws. And they told me, oh, you in Europe with your Digital Service Act, you can't drive more than 5 kilometers per hour. And I felt that in the US, it was like Westerns, the conquest of the West and without limit. And we see the consequences of politics with no limit. They go till the end, till no border. And what I suggested, and it has been implemented in France, is a digital majority before 15 years old, because I'm convinced that so many info from anyone, anywhere is not a success for our kids. And I propose an algorithm consent, because we are all consumers of digital, but we don't know why we read some infos. We don't know why they reach us. So just being the key as citizens, okay, do I consent or not? And this is what I propose, really, to protect our democracies, because many dictators want to divide us.
Yes, I think it's really important to talk about algorithms. So that is the bridge between the old internet and the new internet, and also long-standing AI use in social media. So I was very proud of being one of the 27 ministers signing the Digital Services Act, which actually gives a minimal content moderation. Only illegal or hazardous material is not allowed on the internet or any digital platform. And this has been really a sticking point for the US. And they've gone so far as to deny access to US to Commissioner Thierry Breton, who was a leading civil servant in the European Commission. I think it's absolutely unacceptable. It's shameful, because he was a leading civil servant, but it was us, the ministers, who signed that law. So I think in solidarity, I'm not planning to go to the US in the near future. And this kind of blackmail from the big data platforms is absolutely unacceptable. And I think also within the DSA, there is also some minimal regulation on algorithmic democracy, as you just portrayed. But it's really difficult to kind of explain the algorithm to outside sources. But it is there, and there must be also the platforms are required to provide an alternative if someone would go as far as to kind of want to have her or his own algorithm as a recommender. But I agree that we are not implementing that existing regulation as it should be, and I think there's a lot of space to do what we already have legislated. I'm very proud of that legislation. I'm hoping very much that India, for instance, and other parts of the world, of the democratic, sensible countries, would join us in this legislation.
I just wanted to add a few words because I agree, and I have summed up it this way: what is illegal offline in the real world must be illegal online. It's not simplistic, it's just simple that everyone can agree and understand, and this is the way we try to act in France.
So let me start with a note of optimism first. And because it's not like the Irish guy to be an optimist and the Finn to be a pessimist. But
well, you have all the headquarters of these platforms in Ireland, so I can hear you.
But I think one thing that is important that we also recognize that artificial intelligence can be an empowering tool. So if we look at, for instance, in areas like education, for those who are neurodivergent, to allow for individualized learning, it can be really transformative. It can allow an SME to suddenly have a strategic advantage over a big player. So we shouldn't underestimate, the potential of AI in trying to tackle some of the challenges that we face. And I also think for us, there has to be a sweet spot that we get between supporting innovation and appropriate regulation. I actually don't think that the difference between the approach that's been taken by the European Union and the United States is actually that different. And I think where we need to think about this is how all countries, including India, but most countries look at when a new product or service arrives on the market, we have our rules around product safety. So our regulator looks at it. So if you develop a new type of food or a new drug in the United States, it's regulated by the FDA. That's similar in Europe. It's similar in India. In most countries, you have a regulator who decides before it goes out on the market, this has to happen. The difference now is we have AI-enabled products. And I think what is critical is that our regulators are equipped and upskilled, that they understand how AI operates. So if you're designing a financial product or a foodstuff or a drug and AI is involved, that they understand that process. I think the American fear is that at European level, we'll introduce another super layer of AI regulation, which is what I don't believe that we should do. I think though, coming back, the point Letitia has made and others is, a lot of it is going to be about our values. And I'm really passionate about this. It's critical that democratic values, human rights, the rule of law, human-centric values inform how we allow all of these products to be rolled out. I mean, it particularly applies in defense and security areas, but in so many other areas it applies. And my concern will obviously be that for those of us in democracies, whether in the European Union or in India, we will have a more human-centric approach. But there is certainly evidence already, particularly in places like China and Iran and Russia, that AI and other technologies are being used not in the interests of citizens, but more in the interests of the state. And that's something we have to be very concerned about.
Well, that brings us, I think we are almost at the end of our time, but to a final question about AI and warfare. You know, everyone, I think, has been following what's been happening between Anthropic and the Pentagon, and Anthropic being classified as a supply chain risk by the US Department of Defense, or the Department of War, as they like to call themselves now. But the more serious question is about the marriage between artificial intelligence and autonomous weapon systems. For example, it is believed that the US airstrike, which took out 196 school children in Iran, was a consequence of targeting decisions actually being in the autonomous mode and AI enabled. So therefore, under those circumstances, when you have a very rapid proliferation of the use of artificial intelligence in offensive technologies, how as policymakers do we really try and put some kind of an ethical framework around it, to use your expression? And Madam Letitia, would you go first? And we'll just try and keep it short, because I think the gentleman is there reminding us that we are running out of our time.
The question of autonomous lethal weapons is much older than it didn't start with AI. And this is one of the topics we talked last time within the Interparliamentary Union, because when some countries just want to expand, don't respect any law, then we choose to be weakened when we refuse to have some drones. For instance, in France, we didn't want drones during years, because we thought that that the last decision must always be taken by human beings, that AI or any autonomous weapon can't target any human beings without human decision. But with the Ukraine-Russian war, we've seen that drones were used so much, and with AI they were able to avoid jamming, and we worked hardly all together, because this decision about jus in bellum, le droit de la guerre, must be taken at the international level, and the pressure must be high enough not to see those autonomous weapons able to target on their own. That's not the future I wish for the students present today.
Yes, thank you very much for bringing up this concretely existential threat that is facing us, and we all follow this quarrel between Anthropic and the Pentagon with heavy hearts. 2 points. Actually, first of all, the danger here is that the AI is very capable of perhaps causing massive destruction and also collateral damage as well. But the other threat is that it isn't, that if your large language model, if your chatbot is hallucinating, saying that my wife is the Princess of Monaco, that's not very dangerous. But if it's hallucinating on the war field, could be lethal. So the minimum we need right now is a kind of nuclear proliferation treaty, kind of international treaty to disarm these capable and dangerous weapons. But the chances of that happening are rather slim, because US is resigning from all international treaties as we speak. And this is very, very dangerous. This is something that we would need to align ourselves and really to present our case very strongly that we will not accept unlimited, unrestricted use of AI in the war field.
So I agree. I might make three very quick points just to support that. I think we look at where, state actors will misuse AI. There also is the big fear we have to think about non-state actors. So if some of these autonomous weapons fall into the hands of non-state actors, there are serious dangers and consequences. I think the second is because we've moved, warfare has moved beyond the traditions we think about, and so much of what is going on now is hybrid warfare. It's in the gray zone. I mean, the reality is Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine is not just about the boots on the ground. I mean, European countries can talk about how Russia is effectively engaging in a hybrid war against Europe at present. And our concern is obviously about the deployment of technology and some of those tools. I think the other just final, which is related to all of our discussion, as policymakers, is the concentration of power now in the hands of a small number of individuals. And it has never been, if we talk about economic imperialism, there are a small number of predominantly white men with broadly the same political views where there is a huge concentration of power. Amazon's overall income last year was greater than the GNP of Finland. The tech sector spends more money lobbying the European Union than all other sectors combined. So there is a real concentration of power, and I think our challenge is, as legislators and policymakers globally, and particularly in democracies, how do we ensure that we maintain the interests of citizens at the heart of our discussions? And I think critical coming from this conference is that we ensure that those values that we all share that are really important, human rights, the rule of law and democracy, are at the center of this.
Well, I'm afraid we'll have to end with this because we could have gone on till the morning, but thank you, lady and gentlemen, for an absolutely fascinating discussion. It's been really great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you indeed for that discussion, of course, and also some very thought-provoking points about the way forward in terms of artificial intelligence, which of course is becoming something which is being used in our day-to-day world much, much more than it was a decade ago. Okay, let me turn now to another session which is part of this segment of Next in AI. For a keynote address on AI and regulatory challenges, I want to call on stage Ms. Maria del Carmen Alva Prieto, Member of Congress, Peru. Welcome, ma'am, and thank you for being with us. We are looking forward to your address.